There's a couple different tones for Accidentally in Love, and the first one for the lead guitar is pretty straightforward. It's really just a basic electric guitar sound, bridge pickup. You have the gain up a little bit for some sustain. But it's also a fairly dry sound, so you could add a little bit of reverb, but it doesn't sound like there's echo and chorus or anything like that. It's pretty plain and dry with those harmony leads. During the rhythm guitar parts that, of course, you could play on acoustic or clean electric, you definitely want to clean up the sound a little bit. So you could switch to a clean tone, and I'm just going to bring the gain down a lot here, and you'll notice when I play a G chord, for example, with the same guitar settings, out comes a really clean sounding chord. But again, a very plain and simple sound. It's not a little chorus or echo or any of that kind of process stuff. It's pretty straightforward on this song. And of course, there is one processed part where they use the rotary Leslie speaker effect on the second verse for those kind of leads. So I just kicked in a Leslie speaker pedal for that, and of course, those are pretty readily available as far as effects pedals go. Who knows if they used a real Leslie speaker cabinet or not on the recording. But it has that sound. You can see I have a fast rotor speed on that. And of course, with the amp settings, I really don't want to overwhelm the sound with any one frequency. I've got everything kind of in the center, and amps are individual, so you really have to kind of play with the treble, mid, and bass on your own amp to get the right setting. But of course, if it sounds overwhelmingly shrieky with the treble or too muddy with the bass, you just have to kind of even that out of the presence in the middle. And again, for those clean parts, it's important to not get too much gain in the sound. So that's the electric guitar tone for Accidentally in Love. Accidentally in Love by the Counting Crows, and this is in the key of G in standard tuning. The rhythm guitar parts involve, for the most part, basic open chords. So with the exception of a seventh chord, A7, we're dealing with just your basic open G, C, D, and E minor chords. And if you're not familiar with those, I'll refer you to the tutorials on our website to get more familiar with open chords, which can't be overstated how important those are. But rather than step you through all the fingerings for the open chords, I'm going to outline the progressions in this song. So the intro starts with a G to a C, back to G, to D, and then to G, to C, to E minor, to A7. And so this is just like an open A major chord with a third string ringing open, A7, and it just ends on a C chord. And before I play that, I'm going to explain the right-hand strumming pattern that you could use for that. That would just be one of the more common strumming patterns would be down, down, up, down for each measure. That'd be 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and rhythmically. But if you don't want to count that, you can just think of it as down, down, up, down, 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 up, down. Just get used to that. That's a critical strumming pattern as well. So the whole intro will sound like this for the rhythm guitar. Of course, you could play this on a clean electric guitar or an acoustic guitar. Either is fine. So it sounds like this. G, C, G, D, G, C, E minor, A7, to C. You notice on that last chord, on the C chord, I'm just strumming it on one and letting it ring. And again, you can see that strumming pattern. I'm doing that on each chord. So that's the rhythm guitar intro for Accidentally in Love.
So she said, what's the problem, baby? What's the problem? I don't know. Well, maybe I'm in love. I think about it.
The verse is almost as simple as the intro, just a couple different chord changes here and there, so I'll call them out as I go, starting with G, to C, back to G, and C again, to E minor, to A7, to C, G, C, G, C, E minor, A7 to D to C. And you can see I'm using that same strumming pattern, the down, down, up, down, for each one of those chords. Okay, so again, slowly, that's going to be G to C, G, back to C, E minor, A7 to C, back to G, C, G, C, E minor, A7, D to C. And that's the rhythm guitar verse for Accidentally in Love. Of course, you're going to use the same basic open chords for the rhythm guitar part, but the actual accents and rhythms get a little bit trickier. So let me play the whole thing in time and then explain the timing slowly. So the beginning part of that, everything except the last few measures, last three measures, is this progression between G, A minor, C, and D. And so rhythmically, this is where things get tricky. You're going to strum 2 eighth notes on G on the first beat, 1 and then on A minor, you're actually coming in on the offbeat after beat 2. So what I mean by that is if you're counting a measure of 4/4 time, there are 4 beats in each measure, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you were to subdivide that into eighth notes, you would count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So generally speaking, when we strum these types of parts, you would strum 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you're strumming down on the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s and up on all the offbeats, on all the ands. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and if you were to strum straight eighth notes through a whole measure. So with this part, you're going to apply that same concept. The only problem is there's a few breaks between the chords. You're not going to do this through the whole thing. It's going to be down, up on the G chord, and then up, down on the A minor, which accounts for the fact that it comes in on an offbeat. So that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you can see that C chord comes in on the offbeat after beat 4. And then you're going to play and 2 and on the C chord, which is again up, down, up. And then finally, you hit some downbeats on D. On the end there, just beats 3 and 4, 3 and 4, and just down strums. So again, very slowly. That's down, up, down, up, down, down. So if you played that 3 times in a row. After that, it goes to E minor, and you can use the same strumming pattern that we had in the verse in the intro. Down, down, up, down. To A7, same strumming pattern. And then the final chord of the course is a C add 9 chord. So on this chord, you're actually going to accent the 1, the and of 2, and the downbeat of beat 4. So that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 2, 3, 4. And so you might say to yourself, if you're not familiar with this chord, what is that add 9 about? Why is it called a C add 9 chord? And a ninth is really a note that you can add to a chord to just make it sound a little prettier. It'll usually make it sound a little more interesting than a basic triad. And rather than get too far into the music theory behind it, I just want to point out that if you know your notes on the fretboard, you really can find ninths easily on chords, because a ninth is simply 2 frets above the root of a chord. So if you were to play a C chord, for example, here's a C on the first fret of the second string. So I move up 2 frets, that would be a D note, which would be a ninth on a C chord. If I were to put a ninth, let's say, on an E minor chord, which I won't in this song, but for the purposes of explaining this, here's an E. That's the root of an E minor chord. So the ninth would be the second fret of the first string, which would sound like that. So it's kind of a cool thing to add to chords every once in a while. And that's the rhythm guitar for the chorus on Accidentally in Love.
These lines of lightning mean we're never alone, never alone. No, no, come on, come on.
For the bridge, the rhythm guitar is going to play bar chords for the most part. So this is really going to be the most challenging of all the rhythm parts, I'd say, in this song. And the bridge is very short as well. So it starts with E minor. I'm just going to play the whole thing in time and then explain it. And so for E minor, I've got the first finger barred across the 7th fret, strings 1 through 5, and I'm muting the 6th string. If you're not comfortable with bar chords, I would recommend the tutorial on our website on bar chords, checking that out, and that'll give you some tips for that. But it's certainly one of those techniques that every guitar player needs to eventually get to. So that's E minor. I've got the first finger on the 7th fret, 1 through 5. Second finger's on the 8th fret of the 2nd string, the 3rd finger's on the 9th fret of the 4th string, and the 4th finger is on the 9th fret of the 3rd string. And so another important technique here is that we're muting the chords as we play them. So a staccato feel is what that's called, just means short and muted. So we're just going to strum and release the pressure in the left hand. You'll notice my fingers sort of pulsing on the fretboard like that between the actual chord hits. I'm not really lifting the fingers off, but just rather releasing the pressure. And I can also use the right hand here to pivot and mute the strings as I play the chords too. So it would be like strum, mute immediately. So it's like that kind of feel. Anyway, 4 strums, or 1 measure on E minor, down to C major at the 3rd fret. So this is the same exact concept, except now I'm barring the 3rd fret, strings 1 through 5. I have the 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the 4th string and the 4th finger on the 5th fret of strings 2 and 3. For C major, 1 measure again. And the thing about this is you'll see a lot of players use the 3rd finger, which is fine as well. If you do it that way, you just got to be careful to not involve the 1st string. You don't want to get that A note there on the 5th fret of the 1st string in that chord to a G chord. And so for this, I'm barring all 6 strings. I have the 2nd finger on the 4th fret of the 3rd string, the 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the 5th string, and the 4th finger on the 5th fret of the 4th string. On this part, the rhythm changes a little bit. So you're going to just play on 1 and then the and after 2. So that's 1 and 2 and. Moving up to A minor, you're going to strum on beat 4. So A minor is the same exact thing as G major, moved up 1 fret, and just let the 2nd finger lift off the 3rd string. So you get A minor. And that's going to start on beat 4 and come in on the and after 1 of the following measure. So you get 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. So again, the whole thing slowly will sound like this. And that's the rhythm guitar for the bridge on Accidentally in Love. So there's a breakdown towards the end of the song where everything kind of gets lighter and builds up into that final chorus. And the chords on that part are going to be very, very simple. Just G to C to E minor to D. You're really just going to repeat that through most of that outro until it gets back to the chorus progression. And so when it first comes in, you literally could just strum whole notes, which means you're just strumming on beat 1 and letting them ring through the measure softly. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. As it builds up, back to the same strumming pattern. And a good lesson to learn from that part, that of course the chords are simple, but a good lesson to learn from that part is just the interesting effect that dynamics can have on music. So just the fact that it gets really quiet and builds up, it really changes the mood of the song there. And it's something that I know when I was starting out, it never really dawned on me, but it's such a simple, obvious concept that a lot of beginner and even intermediate players don't use a lot of. So dynamics playing really soft or really loud. Pretty obvious. And that's the breakdown for Accidentally in Love. So the very last few measures of the song, I suppose we'll call that an outro, it just starts on E minor at the end of the chorus, to, rather than going to A7, like the chorus would normally go to at the end, it goes from A minor to a D major chord into a G chord and just ends on the G chord. The important thing about this outro is it slows down a lot. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's as simple as that. So that's the outro rhythm guitar for Accidentally in Love. This is the rhythm guitar performance of Accidentally in Love.
Accidentally in love. Accidentally in love. We're accidentally in love. 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 Accidentally. I'm in love.
This is Accidentally in Love by the Counting Crows. This song's in the key of G major in standard tuning. And the electric guitar comes in with some lead parts that are harmonized in the intro. I'm going to play the first lead part and then explain it slowly. So it starts with a bend at the 10th fret on the 2nd string, just bending up a whole step, and then playing the 10th to the 8th fret on the 2nd string, and then hammering the 8th fret back to the 10th fret. So slowly that's... And then you just repeat that same phrase. And then a third time. In the 4th measure, you're going to play the 10th to the 12th fret, 10th to the 8th fret twice. So you get 10, 12, 10, 8. fifth measure, you're going to play the same phrase we started with. And at this point, in the next measure, it's going to start to harmonize with the other guitar part. And so at this point, you're going to drop from the 8th fret down to the 5th fret, and this is going to be a slide. And then a 5th fret to the 3rd fret slide, and a slide back from 3 to 5. So that's, again, 8, 5, 5, 3, 3, 5. And then you're going to play the same exact slide again. And the whole phrase is going to end with the 5th fret on the 2nd string to the 7th fret on the 3rd string, to the 6th fret on the 3rd string, to the 7th fret on the 4th string, to the 5th fret on the 4th string. So ending on that 5th fret on the 4th string. So really everything for that part is played on the 2nd string except for that very last phrase. So again, slowly the part will sound like this. And that's the lead guitar intro for Accidentally in Love. The second lead guitar part during the intro is really just playing a harmony line against the first lead guitar part. So I'm going to play it in time and then explain it slowly. So as you can see, that was mostly a slide with the first finger on the 4th string from the 9th to the 7th, and then the 7th to the 5th, and back from the 5th to the 7th. So you're going to do that 3 times in a row for the first 3 measures. Again, 3rd time. And then the 4th measure ends this phrase with 7, 9, 7, 5, 5. In the 5th, 6th, and 7th measure, you're going to play the exact same phrase we started with. And in the very last measure, or last couple measures, you're going to start with the 7th fret to the 5th fret on the 4th string twice, down to the 7th fret of the 5th string twice, to the 4th fret of the 5th string twice, ending on the 3rd fret of the 5th string on the C. So slowly the whole part will sound like this. 1, 2, 3. And that's the second lead guitar for the intro on Accidentally in Love.
So she said, what's the problem, baby? What's the problem? I don't know. Well, maybe I'm in love. I think about it.
There's a lead guitar overdub that comes in during the second half of the first verse on the higher strings. I'll play it in time and then explain it. So you could think of the G chord, the open G chord, and just think of the top notes, the D and the G on the 1st and 2nd string. And I'm going to hold those down just as I would on a G chord. And I'm going to pick the 1st string and then the 2nd string back to the 1st string. So that's 1, 2, and then 2nd string, 1st string, 2nd string down together. And then the 1st string again to the 2nd string, and then to the 2nd fret on the 1st string. So for this, I'm actually fretting this with the 2nd finger and lifting the 4th finger off the 3rd fret of the 1st string. So you get picking the 2nd string, 3rd fret again, and then the open 1st string to the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. So again, slowly, that's going to sound like this. And rhythmically, that'd be 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and this next phrase is going to be almost exactly the same. Except there's a slide there from the 3rd fret to the 5th fret at the very end on the 2nd string. If you were holding it like this, you're definitely going to want to do a slide rather than a hammer-on. You could, if you played it like this, I suppose you could do a hammer-on as well, but it probably works better as a slide. Anyhow, once it gets into the E minor chord in the verse, you're going to just drop down to the 4th fret on the 3rd string for a whole note, and then up to the 6th fret on the 3rd string, to the 7th fret on the 4th string over the A7 chord. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. When it goes to the D chord, you're just going to play the 7th fret on strings 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then down to the 5th fret for the C chord that ends the verse. So the whole part slowly will sound like this. And that leads right into the first chorus. So that's the verse 1, lead guitar for Accidentally in Love.
Come on, turn a little faster. Come on, the world will follow after. Come on.
For the chorus, the lead guitar part is really playing the riff. It's not really a lead part, it's more of a secondary rhythm part, but it starts with the G chord, and this is a G power chord. The first finger is on the 3rd fret of the 6th string, my 3rd finger is on the 5th fret of the 5th string, so you get G twice to A twice, and that's obviously the same chord, slid up 2 frets, so you get, and then to a C power chord, this is the same shape, chord shape, 1 string higher, so now I'm on the 4th and 5th string. And at this point, there's a riff that occurs. So you get C, C, and I'm sliding the D up to an E at the 7th fret of the 5th string. So it's a slide from 5 to 7 on the 5th string. And then to the 5th fret on the 4th string, which is a G note. So that's going to be C, C, and then an E and a G note. And those 3 notes, C, E, G, actually are the notes of a C chord. So it's an arpeggio. And then you're going to play a D chord, a power chord at the 5th fret. So that's obviously the same exact shape, 2 frets higher. And you repeat the riff 2 frets higher. So this is now the notes of a D chord. These are now the notes of a D chord. So we get G, G, A, C, D. Just like that. So the whole thing's played with the 1st and 3rd fingers. You're going to play 3 times in a row. A 3rd time. And then it switches to an E minor chord. And for this part, you could move down to an E power chord in an open position. This is a little bit of a heavy-duty kind of chord with the strings this low. So it's the open 6th string and the 1st finger on the 2nd fret of strings 4 and 5. So if that's a little too ferocious for this type of song, you could play a higher version of that E power chord. You could actually just put your 4th finger on the 4th fret of the 3rd string and get the 2nd fret on strings 4 and 5. And really this part's just to kind of fatten up the chorus. It's not really the E minor chord, and the other guitar part is kind of the main thing there. And then when it goes to the A7 in the other guitar part, you can play an A power chord. So the 1st finger is just playing the 2nd fret on strings 3 and 4 with the open 5th string. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, and then C. And this is the same C add 9 chord that we've had in the other parts of the song. And it is, as you can see, the 1st finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string, 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the 5th string, and then the 3rd finger's on the 3rd fret of the 2nd, 4th finger's on the 3rd fret of the 1st, and I have the open 3rd string. So it's C add 9. And there's a rhythmic kick here. In the first chorus, you're going to play 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1. So on 1, the and after 2, and the downbeat of 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. You can do it with all downstrokes or down, up, down. Like that. In the second chorus, you're just going to go ahead and hit the downbeat of the next measure as well. So it's 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2. Actually, 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 would be that second chorus. And that's the lead guitar chorus for Accidentally in Love. There's some melodic lead guitar stuff going on during the second verse, and one of the cool things about this part is that it's played with a Leslie speaker effect, which is like from a Hammond organ, a Leslie speaker cabinet, and that has a really unique sound, and I'm sure you'll hear it in the mix and in the original song, of course. But I'm going to forgo that effect just to explain the parts, so that it'd be easier to actually hear the notes that are being played. So it sounds like this. And that's really based around the notes of a G major pentatonic or E minor pentatonic scale. That would be the pentatonic scale that most closely fits this key of G. And so I'm starting with the 3rd fret on the 6th string, and then just sliding up from the 5th to the 7th fret on the 6th string, to the 5th fret of the 5th string rather, back to the 7th fret of the 6th string. So again, that's G into a C. At the 3rd fret of the 5th string. And again, I'm not going to get too far into it, but really most of what he's playing here is really outlining the notes of the chords themselves in the rhythm guitar progression, which are G, C, and E minor, and A7. And so he's really following along with a lot of the notes of those chords and being pretty straight with the actual notes. He's not adding a lot of stuff that's off the basic chords. So it pays to really know your music theory if you're interested in making up these types of parts. But for now, I'm just going to explain the actual frets. So we've got to the 3rd fret, which is of the 5th string, which is C. And then the same idea there, 7, 5, 7 on string 5, 4, and 5. Back to G. So you can see that's pretty much the same thing there in those first 4 measures. Again, the first 4 measures slowly. Then it goes to the E minor chord, and for this you're just starting on the 7th fret of the 5th string, sliding from the 7th fret to the 9th fret on the 4th string, down to the 7th fret of the 4th string, to the 5th fret of the 4th string, and then 7, 5 on the 5th string to the 5th fret of the 4th string. So that's 3. And now back into the G chord. He's going to start down on the 3rd fret of the 6th string again. This time, rather than going to the 7th fret on the 6th string, which you did before, you're going to slide up an octave to the 9th fret on the 4th string. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. You're going to slide from the 9th fret and then the 7th fret on the 3rd string, and then do a quick hammer-on and pull-off from the 7th to the 8th fret and back on the 4th string, like that, with the 1st and 2nd finger, to the 10th fret of the 5th string, to the 10th fret of the 4th string. So we get kind of a bluesy sounding note there. He adds a B flat in there. So you get, and then a slide from 7 to 9 on the 3rd string, and then 8 on the 2nd string, and a quick slide back from 9 to 7 on the 3rd string. So far that's. And after that, you're going to have the same phrase, the same bluesy phrase with the B flat in it. And then it goes to the 9th fret on the 3rd string, to the 8th fret on the 2nd string twice, 9, 8, 9, 8, ending on the 9th fret there of the 3rd string. And the last few measures of the 2nd verse lead are going to start with the 10th fret on the 2nd string, bent up a whole step, but brought back down to 10, to 8, and then 9, 7 on the 3rd string, and then the 10th fret on the 2nd string, and then a bend up a whole step, brought back down, and it finishes with a hammer-on from the 8th to the 10th fret 3 times in a row, resolving to that 8th fret at the very end. So again, the very last few measures are just going to be. And that's the verse 2 lead guitar for Accidentally in Love.
These lines of lightning mean we're never alone, no, come on.
The bridge is really short, and the electric lead guitar doesn't do a whole lot other than just fill up the sound by playing power chords and quarter notes along with the rhythm guitar. So that's going to start with an E power chord, and my first finger's at the 7th fret of the 5th string, my third finger's on the 9th fret of the 4th string. You want to strum these in quarter notes, staccato quarter notes, so it's going to sound like this. And I'm palm muting there after I play the notes. So you can see in my picking hand, when I hit the string, I'm immediately coming down with the palm of my hand to mute the notes. Like that. That just keeps them real short and accented. The other thing I'm doing in the left hand is as I play them, I'm fretting them to hear the chord, obviously. But as soon as I play it, at the moment that I'm palm muting the strings, I'm just releasing the pressure. So I'm not taking my fingers off the strings or off the frets. I'm just simply releasing the pressure in the left hand so that the strings disconnect with the fret. And that's an important part of most guitar playing, certainly in rock guitar, where you want to get that muted sound between the chords. So you can see my fingers literally moving up and down as I play the chords. So anyway, one measure of an E power chord, staccato quarter notes. Then moving down to a C power chord. This is the same exact idea, only I'm now at the 3rd and 5th fret of strings 5 and 4 rather than the 7th and 9th fret. So a C power chord. And again, those are in straight quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Going to a G power chord, so I'm now on strings 6 and 5. My first finger's at the 3rd fret of the 6th string, my third finger's at the 5th fret of the 5th string. And here's where it gets rhythmically interesting. You're going to play on 1 and 2 and. So you're going to play on 1 and then the offbeat after beat 2. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and. And then on beat 4, you're going to switch to the A chord, which is 2 frets higher, the 5th and 7th fret, and then play on the and after one of the following measures. So it goes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. You rest on that last measure. So slowly the whole thing will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. And that's all there is to it. So that's the electric guitar for the bridge on Accidentally in Love. There's a breakdown towards the end of the song where, as we talked about before, the rhythm guitar just plays between a G, C, E minor, and D chord. It sort of repeats before the outro solo. And during this part, there's a nice melodic lead guitar part, again, based on the notes of the chords, and it just kind of repeats over those rhythm guitar chords. It sounds like this. And that repeats over the chord. So that's simply the 3rd fret on the 2nd string, 5th fret on the 1st string, to the 3rd fret on the 1st string. So we got down to the 1st fret of the 2nd string, to the 3rd fret of the 1st string, back to the 1st fret of the 2nd string, to the open 2nd string, then to the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, to the 2nd fret of the 1st string, and back to the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. So again, slowly that's... And not to get too deep into it, but really, again, all that is some specific notes of the chords that the rhythm guitar player is actually playing. Just kind of created into a melodic idea that repeats. After you play that a couple times, it just goes back to that same riff that we had in the very intro of the song, where you have the... That same opening riff that we had, you're going to play twice before the outro solo. So that is the breakdown lead guitar for Accidentally in Love. During the outro, there's a lead guitar solo that comes in during the chorus, the outro chorus, I guess it would be. And I'm going to play the whole thing in time and then break it down slowly. So that's just G major pentatonic, or E minor pentatonic. I'm starting at the 15th or the 17th fret of the 2nd string. to the 15th fret of the first string. You're going to play that a few times in a row. That little phrase. Let's count that. How many times in a row are you going to play that? Almost 4 entire times. So it's a third time. And the fourth time, you're going to hit that 15th fret on the first string and then do 4 quick hammer-ons into the 17th fret from the 15th fret. Back to the 15th fret, and then 15-7 on the second string to 15 on the first string, and then a bend up a whole step from the 17th fret on the first string, and then 15 to 17 on the second string again, and then a quick hammer-on from 15 to 17 on the first string, a bend, back to 15 on the first string, 15, 17 on the second string, then 15, 15, 17, 15, 15, and then it just ends with a bend from the 17th fret up a whole step. You just end on that 15th fret, so you're holding that bend, releasing on beat 4, and then ending, resolving on the 15th fret of the first string twice and sliding off at the very end. So again, slowly, the whole thing will sound like this. And that's the outro solo for Accidentally in Love.
I'm in love.
For the very last few measures of the song, you're just coming out of that chorus at the very end where you get the... And after that D chord the last time, you're just going to play the E chord, which is, again, the 7th and 9th fret on strings 5 and 4, E power chord. The rhythm guitar is playing E minor, and then down to a D power chord. So this is the 5th and 7th fret on strings 5 and 4, and just ending on a G chord in open position. So for this G chord, because I've got a good amount of overdrive on this guitar sound, I'm muting this 5th string, which would be the B note, which is the 3rd of the chord, and that could just sound muddy with an overdriven guitar sound. So you'll notice I have the second finger just barely touching that string to mute it. It gives you a bigger sounding G and less muddy, of course. Another important thing about that outro, the very end, is that, of course, it slows down a lot. So you have to really watch the timing on that. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's the lead guitar outro for Accidentally in Love. This is the electric performance of Accidentally in Love.
So she said, what's the problem, baby? What's the problem? I don't know. Well, maybe I'm in love. I think about it every time I think about it. Can't stop thinking about it. I'm accidentally in love, accidentally in love.